Hi, I'm Rebekah. I'm a board-certified music therapist and a music therapy professor. The first thing you need to know about music therapy is it's a research and evidence-based field. You have to go to an American Music Therapy accredited school, and they also need to be then accredited by the National Association of Schools of Music. This means that they're likely going to teach classical Western music in some way, shape, or form. There's only about 88 music therapy schools in the US. There's a little over 10,000 board certified music therapists, although music therapy has been an established profession since 1950. Music therapy students see music in a completely different way, and music therapists also see music in a completely different way. Our students go from being performers and being students of music to seeing music as a tool in medium or manipulative, if you will. Music therapy typically is goal-oriented, but those goals look different for everybody. Music therapy is used to address a variety of goals, all the way from intellectual and physical disabilities to neurologic rehab. We have people who work with incarcerated individuals in the criminal justice system. And I personally have done work with foster youth and with at-risk youth. So music therapists truly can work with anyone, and it's very cool to see them do it. Most of the music therapy videos and documentation you will see is through core research facilities. There's a lot of conversations in the medical field about music therapy and a lot of justification for services, and we have some amazing music therapists who work on those things consistently. I'm not necessarily wanting to go down that route. I want to teach you about music therapy, but I also want to teach musicians about music therapy. I think many musicians are aware of music therapy, but they don't understand the amount of work we have to go through to become a music therapist. For instance, every music therapist has to complete a minimum of a 1,200-hour internship after completing their bachelor's degree and then sit for a board certification exam. These are things that ensure that we have ethical liability, that we have a team backing us that holds us to a standard. In addition, we have to stay within our scope of practice and our code of ethics. This is all very, very, very important so that we don't do harm. And you may be thinking to yourself, how can you do harm with music? There's a lot of ways you can do harm with music. Maybe one day we'll talk about all that, but it's very important to know your clients, know their needs, and how to address it with music. Today, I want to talk a little bit about how music therapists view music. By the time a music therapist has gone through school, they have taken music theory courses, which study Western music theory. They have taken music appreciation, music history, maybe like a world cultures class. They have taken aural skills classes, which helps them identify melodic and harmonic lines, as well as rhythmic patterns. And they will know guitar, piano, their primary instrument, and voice at a minimum. Most students come out learning a whole lot more than that. I know in our program we have dulcimer, have ukulele, and then a bunch of different various percussion instruments. So when students begin this process of learning, the first thing we tell them is to start thinking of music as a tool. There are elements of music that you can change to get desired results, to elicit something from someone. Think of when one of your favorite songs lands on a chord and it feels like it pulls at your heart, or it pulls at your brain, or your body wants to move. Those are all physiological responses we know that music gives us. So when we're thinking of those things, it's very important to note that music therapists are aware and have to be some of the top musicians around, because they have to be able to utilize all these different things in a setting to get what they want at the drop of a hat. A lot of things in music therapy are not something we can plan for. We can go in with ideas of what we could do, but because there's such a human element to it, we have to be ready for anything to happen. We know there's some things we can manipulate. We can manipulate what instrument we use. A lot of times this fluctuates what we call the timbre, or the sound. So you will have percussion instruments that might have a really bright, ringing, metallic sound, or you might have a membranophone, which is like a drum or something that uses a membrane-like tissue to create a sound. And that's going to give you kind of a a warmer sound and a more dull sound. Music therapists are trained with how each of these things are going to actually process in the brain and how we can utilize them to either keep from harming the client or encouraging the clients to kind of interact and integrate in the music therapy process. Music therapists have all sorts of different philosophies, just like counselors have different philosophies and lenses, and therapists have different philosophies and lenses. Music therapists do too. The most important is being client-centered, making sure the client knows that you are there for their best interests, and you have the tools and they have the work, and we can go through it together. At least that's my personal preference. When we're talking about the variables or the variants, the manipulatives, you also have, so you have your instrumentation, which also kind of reflects into your timbre. That could even mean multiple instruments. This is where I see the crossover a lot in music production. Because if you're looking for a specific sound, you have to be aware of all the instruments you have and all the things you have available to you to make the sound you want. Having a guitar is nice. Having a piano is nice. You can definitely accompany yourself and create pleasing music utilizing both of those things. But in order for you to have a really exciting and engaging experience, you need to know that if I add a drum doing one rhythm, or I add tone chimes, which are really cool, like metallic tubes that you hit and they have a hammer on top and they create a tone, it's going to add this level of timbre and of noise. Music therapists are actually trained to know what that's going to do in the brain, in the body, and in the mind being like psychologically, for you to process different things. Many people know that you can change a genre. That is manipulative. We know we can change styles. We can change rhythms. We can change something called tempo, which is how slow or how fast you play. You can change registers, meaning where the client is singing in their voice. Maybe you're working on voice rehab, or maybe you're just working on the client exploring their voice in their mouth. And that is a really easy thing to utilize with music therapy. You might also switch keys if you're a musician. You might also transpose or harmonize. There's so many manipulatives. The biggest ones we see are tempo, timbre, instrumentation, dynamics, loud or soft, and anywhere in between, and then accents, where we're really putting the emphasis on things. This means music therapists are always listening to music, or they should be. They're always listening and listening for things that are different. Because there's certain things that your body wants to do. Most songs you want to clap along to if they're a clapping song. Some of the songs you want to sway. These are all natural human responses in the body that we know happen neurologically. Much of what we have, research-wise, just backs up what we already know intuitively, which is really cool. We have some new research coming out about cortisol levels and cancer and a bunch of other things, and I have so many people I'd love to talk to about all that. But truly, what it comes down to is viewing music as a tool instead of just as an art or just as a performance. But I think just like with any tool, there is an art to utilizing the tool. You see, producers don't go into something saying, well, I'm only going to create one sound. I'm only going to create one thing. Because if you do, you're keeping it flat and you're not doing your job as a producer. Vocalists typically, especially in pop, and pop, when I say pop, I mean popular music instead of instrumental or whatever you might consider not popular. In popular music, vocalists don't sing a song the same way every time. They would get bored out of their minds. They sing it differently. That's why live versions sound different than recorded versions. The instrumentation is always different too. A lot of the instrumentations you hear on recorded versions are not at all what you get on live versions. Do you see what I'm saying? Performers and recorders and producers all kind of use the same manipulatives to get a desired result. Granted, theirs is for art and ours is for science, if you will. It is science, but ours is for science and therapeutic benefit. All these things cross together for some really interesting discussions. I look forward to having discussions with artists. One I have recently talked to, we got down the rabbit hole of, I don't think I could ever personally perform. And that artist determined, she was like, I could never walk in a room to help someone with my music. And I was like, well, that's really interesting because our points of view were so very different on those topics. And I think that in order for us to be embraced in the arts world, just as much as any other world we're advocating for, we have to talk to people about it. The last thing I'll say is I would love to talk to any artist out there. I would want to know as an artist if my music had the ability to make somebody speak, had the ability to bring somebody into consciousness, had been utilized when somebody was learning to walk or talk again. And I think that that's so important. And if you as a music therapist have a story about that you would like to share, feel free to send it to me, because as I meet people along the way, I'd love to be able to tell them that their art has gone way beyond the just feeling things, which in of itself is a therapeutic benefit, but it's not music therapy. Yes, music is a wonderful tool, and it really does help you regulate emotionally, and I'd be happy to do a mini pod on that. But all in all, music therapy is evidence-based. It's research-backed, and everything we do goes back to the research. We all do it in our own way. We all make high-quality art, but sometimes it's not exactly what you think it's going to be. I'm excited to journey along with you guys on this. Don't know who's going to see this. Don't know how far this is going to go. But if at any point you do have questions or you do have topics you want covered, I would be so happy to cover them. I could talk about music therapy for hours. Actually, it's kind of one of my jobs. But I also could do music therapy for hours. It's also one of my jobs. And I think it would be a loss to not discuss that and not really show the performance world and the art world what truly music therapy can do. I talked to one artist who's familiar with music therapy, and we discussed the being able to say words again with music, and he hadn't even realized that was an option. I just want to have these discussions with people. I want their real reactions. I have no going forward agenda other than let's connect therapists and artists and let's see what happens. I hope you'll come along for the ride. I'm going to try to pre-record a lot of these and then get the podcast going, and maybe this summer we'll find some really cool people to chat with.